Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Fit Foodie Film Takes with your host, your girl, Fit Foodie, and Henrietta. Say hey, Henrietta. And today we're going to talk about the most magical Negro, the Black Jesus, Denzel Washington in Man on Fire. When I tell you this was a movie that, how do I want to say? This is a movie that made Denzel Washington stand out for me from the rest. Mind you, when this movie came out in 2003, I was in the third grade, okay? So I was itty bitty. I didn't know Denzel's previous collections. When this came out, I was in it, and it's still one of my most favorite Denzel performances. And even now, watching it recently, I could still say the same thing. I love this movie. I love this movie with Dakota Fanning. Dakota Fanning was my girl growing up. And of course, now as a grown woman rewatching the movie, I see a lot of things differently than I did as a kid. So because of that, I want to deep dive into how Denzel Washington, or Creasy Bear, is the literal Black Jesus of the film, and how this film is way more religious than what I thought when I was younger, and how there's religious themes that go into it. Now, I just want to have some disclaimers. I grew up being a Christian. I went to a Bible college. I know the Bible very well, and I know religion very well, the Christian religion, that is. And because of that, anything that I state is just a reference. I'm not here trying to ruffle any feathers. I'm not here trying to offend anyone. I just want to compare how the religious context of Jesus and everything that happened in his life is parallel to the film. So before we get started, a couple things. There will be spoilers. So if you have not watched the film, go ahead and watch it. If you just want to hear my review of it, then welcome. Here on my channel, I review different films that I like and also films that I find interesting. Also, any films that you guys recommend for me. Mentioning that, the reason why I'm covering this film as well is because my grandfather, this channel is dedicated to him, said this is also one of his favorite films. So Grandpa, if you're watching, this is for you. I hope you enjoy it, as well as the rest of you guys watching. So with all that said, let's get into it. So go ahead, sit back, relax, grab a snack, get yourself a drink, grab your Bibles, and let's get into the world of the magical Negro, the Black Jesus himself, Denzel Washington in Man on Fire. So how I'm going to break things down. First, I'm going to give a brief overview of Man on Fire as a whole. I'm going to touch on my premise of the magical Negro and Christian Jesus. And then I'm going to break down each character and what they represent in the film as it relates to those biblical characters. So I'm not going to be doing everything in chronological order. Man on Fire is a 2004 action thriller film directed and produced by Tony Scott, with screenplay by Brian Helgeland and co-produced by Aaron Michelin. It's based on the 1980 novel of the same name by A.J. Quinnell. The film stars Denzel Washington and Dakota Fanning in leading roles alongside Christopher Walken, Radha Mitchell, Giancarlo Gianni, Mark Anthony, Rachel Ticotin, and Mickey Rourke in supporting roles. This adaptation shifts the settings from Naples, Italy to Mexico City, diverging from the earlier 1987 film version of Quinnell's novel, which was also produced by Michelin. And that's what I also love about this, because even though it's set in Mexico City, this is the first film where Denzel Washington and Dakota Fanning made a movie together. And it's so funny because in Equalizer 3, the movie where they reunite and they're both in the same film again, guess where they are? In Italy. So I thought that was a cute little thing they did there. The film follows a despondent alcoholic former CIA officer turned bodyguard who embarks on a violent revenge spree after a 9-year-old under his charge is kidnapped in Mexico City. The magical Negro is a literary and filmic stereotype where a Black character, often portrayed as having mystical, supernatural, or profound innate wisdom, appears solely to help a white protagonist resolve their problem. They are generally underdeveloped characters lacking their own backstory, acting as a plot device to facilitate the white character's personal growth. And in this case, it is Lisa Ramos, the mother of Pita, so Pita's mama, by getting rid of her trash-ass husband, or the survival of Pita. And I'll get more into that in a second. The purpose of the magical Negro is to guide, heal, or save the white protagonist, often leading to their own self-sacrifice or disappearance. Denzel Washington guides detectives and news reporters to clear out a good portion of corrupt officials who are ruining Mexico City and their systems. And in saving Pita in the very end, what does he do? He sacrifices himself. Characteristics of the magical Negro: non-threatening, patient, spiritual, and sometimes possesses literal magical powers. Now, mind you, we know Denzel is not non-threatening, patient, or I would say he's a little more religious than spiritual, but not really quite that. But he does possess some magical powers. Because how did he get shot 3 times with a collapsed lung and he goes out and terrorizes everybody in the city? The magical Negro origin. This phrase was coined by filmmaker Spike Lee in 2001 to criticize this limiting paternalistic archetype in popular media. So the magical Negro has been used in a whole bunch of films. I'm sure you guys can think of some. If you have any examples, please leave them in the comments below because I would love to hear your views on it. But overall, yeah, Denzel, and I'll go over his backstory. He doesn't really have one. We have basic knowledge of him, nothing really any deeper. And he goes out of his way to dismantle a whole system by himself as a black man in Mexico City. If that's not magical, then I don't know what is. Now I'm going to get into how he is the Black Jesus. The story of Jesus, as told in the Bible, centers on his life, ministry, death, and resurrection as the Son of God. Born to Mary in Bethlehem manger, Jesus grew up to perform miracles, healing the sick, calming storms, taught through parables, and gathered 12 disciples. He was crucified by Roman authorities but rose again, providing salvation. So how is Creasy Bear Black Jesus? Creasy was crucified by the corrupt Mexican police. I think he died and they brought him back, where he was providing all kinds of salvation in Mexico City by ridding them of what? All their trash and their sin and evil. Jesus' ministries and miracles. At around age 30, after being baptized by John the Baptist and enduring temptation in the desert, Jesus traveled around Judea preaching about the kingdom of God. He performed numerous miracles such as healing the sick, feeding thousands, and raising the dead, which gathered large crowds. Now, does this exactly reflect to Man on Fire? No. But Creasy Bear, he knew the Bible very well. He knew it word for word. He knew his scripture. And even though he didn't heal the sick and resurrect people or feed thousands, he did perform miracles. Because how is a man who's actively bleeding out, who needs to be in recovery for a month after being shot up, have his heart broken, go out and bring Mexico City's corrupt government to their knees? And we know Jesus taught different parables. One that I want to touch on is the prodigal son. He went out into the world doing what he wanted to do, and he came back and found peace within himself. That's very similar to Creasy. Also, Jesus challenged religious authorities to stop having these institutions that basically don't serve the people. And what does Creasy do? The same thing. Jesus' death and resurrection. After being betrayed by Judas and arrested, Jesus was crucified in Jerusalem under Pontius Pilate. He died, was buried, and according to the Gospels, rose from the dead 3 days later, defeating death and initiating the early Christian church. And we'll get to Judas in a second, that bitch ass man. But yes, Creasy was betrayed. He was shot up. I think he did die. He was in the hospital bed at a vet office because they were trying to come after him again. 3 days later, where he went and he tore up Mexico City. The core message of Jesus in his story is one of redemption, love, and the establishment of a new covenant with God. All of this in relation to Creasy. Creasy was a killer who had a conscience, and he tried to wallow in his self-pity to cope, especially with alcohol. And when he was protecting someone pure and kind like PETA, the epitome of the white lamb, the innocence, Creasy did his version of redemption out of love and reestablishing his relationship with God. And I'll touch more on that when I go through his section. I laid out my 2 premises of the Magical Negro and Jesus, and now I want to go through different characters in the film and what they represent, and then also break down Denzel's portion to add in facts to why I feel like my theory is correct. So starting off with Rayburn, who's played by Christopher Walken. I see him in the film as God. And no, not just because he's a white man, because he is the outside storyteller, the one who brought Denzel into this movie, a father figure and a friend, the one who knows Denzel best. And if you think about God, what did he do? He saw the torment of what was going on in the world. He decided to send his son out to go out and help the people, do what he needs to do to cleanse them of their sins. And in a sense, that's kind of similar. Creasy came to Mexico on impulse to see his longtime friend. And he says in the film it was impulse, but I think he was looking for his anchor, again, a connection to Jesus connecting with God. And he talks to his friend and hangs with his friend and has special moments. His friend is kind of a compass for him. And when Denzel is shot up in the film, he's there to visit him. And he's there when he's taken to a vet hospital so he could be safe. And then he's also the voice that tells Denzel that Peter died due to a botched ransom drop. So he's the one, again, who's revealing all of this information, who's revealing all of this insight. A specific quote from Rayburn is, Creasy's art is death, and he is about to paint his masterpiece. Was Jesus not an artist? Was he not a carpenter? Again, he knows him very well and he knows what he's about to do. Next, we're going to talk about Lisa, who is Mary Magdalene to be specific. And by the way, Lisa is Peter's mama. So in the Bible, Mary Magdalene was a prominent disciple of Jesus who supported his ministry financially, remained steadfast at the crucifixion, and was the first recorded witness to Jesus' resurrection, earning her the title of Apostle of all apostles. Now, does that exactly correlate? No. However, Lisa supported Creasy even when she felt like he wasn't treating her daughter the best. She was there and she had a feeling about him that she liked, and she stood by his side even when all this nonsense unfolded, and I'll get to that in a second. And she was there until his end. She was. So in the film, when we first see Lisa, her bitch-ass husband, Mark Anthony, brings Creasy into the home to see if he's a good fit for Peter as a bodyguard. And she sizes him up, and I would have to. And immediately has Peter show him his room, which means he's got the job. And I feel like women are very good at sensing out who belongs, who you can trust, and who you can't. But it's interesting how she couldn't suss out her husband. There might be reasons for that, but interesting. Of course, we see her being actively involved in Peter's life. You can tell that Peter is her everything. But you can see how Lisa is the one who is moving everything along. She's responsible for Peter. She keeps the household going. She makes sure everything is structured and in line. After Peter gets kidnapped, of course, Lisa is distraught like any mama would be. And when it was revealed that Peter was killed due to the botched ransom, she is losing it. And where's Mark Anthony? Where is he? Next, we're going to get into Mark Anthony. That is Judas, and I hate him. It's funny, as a kid, I didn't know who the villain was or was. Now, as an adult, I spotted that. And mind you, I did see the movie before, but even if I hadn't, I would have sensed something was up with him, and I'll let you know what his red flags are, what he did in the film to let me know that he was a villain from the jump, even before the movie started. So in the Bible, Judas was one of the 12 original apostles to Jesus Christ, known for betraying Jesus to the religious authorities for 30 pieces of silver and subsequent crucifixion. He is often characterized by greed, with biblical accounts noting him as a thief who managed the disciples' money. All of that lines up. All of it tracks. Because of Mark Anthony, his bitch ass, Denzel was sacrificed and killed. Not only once, but twice. All of this whole movie is because of him. And here's how we know he was Judas and the villain the whole time. He was complaining at the start of the film to Mickey Rourke that his wife wanted more protection for his daughter, and he's complaining about getting all this stuff done. Why are you complaining? Do you not want your child safe? The film starts off with 70% of victims who are kidnapped don't make it. Do you want your child to die? And he's a homosexual too, and I'll get to that in a second. It is shown early on that Mark Anthony is struggling financially, which is why you don't deal with men who struggle financially, because they will make it everyone else's problem. They'll make it worse. And at that same dinner where he's talking with Mickey Rourke, you could tell he does not give a fuck about his wife, because what the hell do you mean that Mickey Rourke can say to your face that she's a piece of ass that's hard to find? To the man's face. He's talking about your wife. A real man would have slapped him upside the head, and the fact that he was okay with that shows the kind of person that he is. Now, when Mark Anthony first meets Creasy tells him that he's always drinking. He calls himself a drunk and a has-been, and he's closed off, even though he's offered this bodyguard position. And so Mark is like, okay, well, you're reasonably priced, you have all these credentials, even though your reaction time might suck. Don't tell my wife, and we'll keep it a secret, and we'll just keep things going. Red flag. Because wouldn't you want the best person to protect your family? Why would you want a possible drunkard on the job who probably won't even do his job effectively? You should want the best pick for your family, which ultimately he did, okay, to his demise. But he did get the best person for the job. And it's funny because even Denzel looks at him sideways. He feels like something is wrong with that, because there is. And as the film goes on, you see that Denzel is more of a father figure present in Peeta's life than Mark. You can tell who truly loves and enjoys her company. And just a side note, never be with a desperate man. Again, a Judas type. After Denzel shows up after killing people, investigating, leading back to Peeta's home, he's starting to give him the third degree. Creasy rightfully says he will snatch the life out of him, which I don't think anyone in Mark's life had ever told him that. He needed to be told that. And then it's revealed that Mark set everything up. He was broke. He was in debt. Lisa, Peeta's mama, was slapping the mess out of him. Good. Not saying that I support abuse, but I think in this case, how the story was told, I'm okay with it. Mark Anthony talks about how he set up the kidnapping to get the money to help set up all three of them. You did it for yourself. And that's what men like this will do. Judas's, Mark Anthony's character, that's what they'll do to you. They'll be selfish. They won't communicate with you. They'll use, because Lisa is hot. Lisa is a tall, white, blonde woman. That's why he takes her everywhere, because that is his trophy. And that's the only, sorry, I'm getting off topic here. That's how he gets his status. Anyway, Denzel didn't even have to do any of the work. Lisa got all this information out of him herself. And I think Creasy was very impressed by that. And then he gave a gun for Mark to use, saying that the bullet always tells the truth and never lies. And we'll get back to where that came from in a second. And because he's filled with pity and grief, he pulls the trigger and then he's done so good. And who did the same thing? Who off themselves in the Bible? Judas, after betraying Jesus. I really am right. Basically, that was not Peeta's real daddy. That may have been her biological sperm donor, but that was not her daddy. Next, we're going to get into Peeta, who is the lamb. That's what she represents. In the Bible, the lamb symbolizes innocence, purity, and the ultimate sacrifice, serving as a primary metaphor for Jesus Christ, the Lamb of God, who takes away the sin of the world. Now, I know that is related to Jesus, the Denzel character. However, Peeta represents all the good things in life that Creasy did not have within himself and what he's not seen in the world. So much destruction, so much pain. And he met a little white girl who was nothing but love and curiosity and joy, a symbol of peace, if you will. So again, growing up, I loved Dakota Fanning movies. That was my girl. She was number one for a reason. And Peeta, and though she's inquisitive and can be seen as annoying by a lot of people, she's just a very smart 9-year-old. When Creasy noticed that someone was following them from behind, he asked Peeta for a pencil. She handed to him, and then she noticed immediately to look back and write down most of the numbers. Comes in clutch. And even though they had a rough start because Peeta wanted all these personal questions, trying to get to know him, had boundaries and said, no, I'm not going to do that. Eventually start to bond when she brought him into her world. I love the movie. The chemistry between them, excellent. And when they really started bonding, the sister at the school, the madre, was talking with Creasy. And he was like, I'm sorry the parents are not here. They're on a business trip. And she rightfully said, today you are her father. She even knows. And she's only at the school. That was her daddy. And then afterwards, Peeta uses her own money and she gives Creasy a gift and a bear. And it's a St. Jude cross, the saint of lost causes. And to expound upon that, patron saint of lost causes, Saint Jude, is famously associated with difficult or impossible situations. Tradition suggests that because he was often confused with Judas, the betrayer, he was rarely invoked, making him eager to assist in desperate cases. If that's not the exact point of this film, Creasy thought of himself as a lost cause. And he's able to make the impossible happen by meeting Peter. Now, Bear, Creasy Bear. Peter had a bear, a toy bear that she hugged onto, that she latched onto, and she named him Creasy Bear. And in the Bible, the bear primarily symbolizes raw, destructive power, divine judgment, and ferocity, often representing menacing earthly powers of God's wrath. While sometimes representing dangerous, wicked rulers, bears also symbolize the protective, fierce power of God, and in prophetic imagery, future peace. Y'all, I'm not wrong. It lines up. And then in Peeta and Creasy's last encounter before she was kidnapped, Peeta gives Denzel a dandelion, or a dandelion if you will, and he puts it in his pocket while wearing his St. Jude's, and he's playing with the dog. Now, the spiritual meaning of a dandelion symbolizes resilience, hope, healing, and the power of transformation, often representing the ability to thrive in difficult conditions. It represents the journey of the soul. I'm sure everything in the film was done intentionally, but actually looking deeper into all this, it just reinforces the same theme. Now we're going to get into the main character himself, Denzel Washington, Creasy Bear, Black Jesus, and all the points on why he is Black Jesus and the Magical Negro. So Denzel crosses through El Paso to go into Mexico, looking rugged, drinking out of a flask. We see his addiction in full force. And then we see a flash of a volcano and some foreshadowing of the end. Again, the prophecy. As soon as he crosses the border, it shows that his fate was sealed. And it's interesting how the landscape that he looks to in this foreshadowing is a volcano. A volcano represents intense dormant power, signaling a need for transformation through emotional release or creative outbursts. Spiritually, it symbolizes the unconscious mind, where deep-seated passions, rage, or spiritual energy build up over time before erupting into conscious life, causing profound personal change. And I'll touch on this more in the end, where we actually see this foreshadowing come true. So we find out that Denzel has been moving from place to place. Like I said, with his friend Christopher Walken, he comes to Mexico to kind of find his compass, to figure out what he's going to do next. Peeta asked Creasy a question. She said, "Do you think being Black in Mexico City is a positive or negative?" And Denzel said, "Time will tell." Another point, when Creasy first drops off Peeta into her Catholic school, the madre, who I told you later on, tells him that today you are her father, that same lady. She asks him, "Do you see the hand in God in what you do?" And his answer is no. And then she wants to recite some scripture. He completes it and he says he is the sheep that got lost. So again, he's lost trying to find his path again. And didn't Jesus wander for a time? Next, I want to talk about how when Creasy is out and about, he finds the song Blue Bayou, and that becomes his theme song for him and also Peeta. And the song Blue Bayou is a melancholic yet hopeful ballad about longing for home, comfort, and lost love. The lyrics express a desperate need to escape a lonely, high-pressure life, to return to an idyllic, familiar place of peace. And he found that song when what? He gets into Peeta's world. And again, laying on my Magical Negro point, Peeta tries to find information about Creasy. And again, we know nothing about him except for the fact that he was in the CIA and that he's a professional killer. Anything else about his backstory, we don't know. And it's interesting because I recently saw that coming out in April, I believe. There is a show called Man on Fire that's talking about his past life. So we'll get some backstory. It's going to be interesting. Let me know if you guys want me to watch that and to dive into that. I just hope it's good. Trying to play a young Denzel Washington, big shoes to fill. So there's a night where Denzel is up. He's clearly plagued by his thoughts. He's drinking and he decides he's going to end it all and shoots himself. But the gun misfires. He was drowning in his misery. And even though he tried to end it at that point, it was not his fate. He calls up his friend. He tells him about, a gun misfiring. And his friend says the bullet always tells the truth. Remember, that's what he told Mark Anthony towards the very end. Yeah. Peeta and Creasy are bonding over swimming. And I think that's related to Jesus and water. How one of the stories where Jesus and his disciples were on a boat and there was a big storm, how Jesus told them, keep your eye on me and you will not sink. And I think that's the same story where he was telling Peeta, do not let any type of fear stop you from winning this race. And they practice and they practice. And he taught her how to free herself from any kind of fear. So again, another parallel with Jesus. And when I tell you, this is the start where we start to see Denzel and his looks. I don't know who the costume designer was, and I don't know if it was just Denzel himself. It might be a combo of both, but each fit from here on out was fire. And he just looks so good walking in slow motion. Yeah. So when Creasy drops off Peeta to go to a piano lesson, that's when things start to pop off. The streets get blocked off by police officers. Peeta comes out and he's getting shot. He's shooting people, getting shot again. Peeta is traumatized because her best friend got shot and then she gets kidnapped. And I'm sure she thought he was dead because he rolled out on the floor and was just passed out. And so I think he really did die. I think the doctors were able to bring him back. And then we find out when he's all bandaged up in a coma in the hospital that being a black man in Mexico turns out to be a negative. Not really a good thing. Of course, they set him up as a villain even though the whole system is corrupt. Again, another reference to Jesus. So mind you, Creasy was in the CIA, has been killing for many years, has been a heavy alcoholic for years. He got shot 3 times, has a collapsed lung, is getting blood transfusions. He really shouldn't be alive because he is beyond critical. It's interesting, they're trying to move him from the hospital to the vet hospital so he could be safe. And it reminded me of that Steven Seagal movie, Hard to Kill, which I thought was one of the coolest scenes in that movie. If you want me to do a review of that, let me know. And then we find out at this time the deal goes bad. Peeta was killed and the ransom didn't go as planned. When Christopher Walken, Rayburn, tells him this, Creasy, he is now dealing with a broken heart. And I don't know if y'all know, but having a broken heart can wreck you physically as well. That is a spiritual wound. And at this time, we learn that if he doesn't stay in the hospital for a minimum a month, he's going to bleed out. And we know Jesus faced corrupt organizations like the Pharisees. Now Creasy has to face corrupt family, friends, cops, anyone involved in this. People were putting curses on him. And we find out this whole organization is called La Hermandad. And that's the brotherhood that protects all these corrupt officials. Again, like the Pharisees in the Bible. And we see over time that Denzel is bleeding out slowly. Jesus did not die a quick way. He did not have a quick death. It was slow and it was painful, but he was bearing all the sins of those. He then talks to Lisa's mama before he begins to do what he's about to do in great fashion. And he said he's going to kill everyone involved. And she said, yeah, I heard. Go ahead and do that. I support you. Again, Mary. Supporting Jesus. So Denzel, by the help of Peeta finding the license plates number that she originally wrote down like a month ago, was able to find out the first kidnapper. And with that torture, the thing is, torture is not a good thing. Revenge is not a good thing. Doing all these things Denzel Washington is about to do is not good. However, he makes it look so good. Just style, substance, all of it. So with this first corrupt dude, what does he do? He tortures him, cutting off fingers, ears, cauterizing the wounds. His one-liners are just peak at this time. Like, he's not playing around with none of y'all. We learn about La Voz, which is the voice. And we can maybe talk about how that's the voice of the devil, causing all of this, being the center part. And then we see Denzel, after this first incident, getting into a pool, swimming and bleeding out. It's like he's being baptized and shedding old parts of himself. Also, it could represent him feeling overwhelmed. again, drowning in more of a physical sense versus his alcoholism before. Then Denzel gets into the rave club, and mind you, for some reason this is one of my favorite scenes, and he gets up in there asking about PETA, and then he pulls out a shotgun. He's duct taping people, blowing people away, blowing off toes, and people are just like, just not knowing a thing, just having fun. He's getting more information about the ransom, about the case. Another girl gets rescued who was just kidnapped. Denzel sets the whole club on fire, shooting a shotgun to get everyone out, and as the whole place explodes, the people are just jamming. And mind you, this look right here is the inspo of this scene because it went so hard. Literally one of my favorite scenes. Love this movie. Then we see Denzel in a suit, and just a nice looking suit. Denzel in his walk. He busts into these old people's house so he can good range because he has a fucking rocket launcher. They shouldn't have messed with this man. And the elderly man tells him that the church says that one must forgive. And I think he's telling Creasy this, one, because they broke into his house to do vengeance, but two, because he literally has a fucking rocket launcher. And then Creasy says, forgiveness is between them and God. It's my job to arrange the meeting. Best line in the film. Me and my family say that line all the time. And isn't that what Jesus is? In the end, a connector to God. You need to go through Jesus to get to God. Woo! Denzel blows that motorcade up, and his Mike Myers ass got downstairs in 0.5 seconds and starts shooting and drops off with the crooked detective. Now, this scene always bothered me as a child because what do you mean you put a bomb up his ass? Creasy was nothing but creative. And basically he sets up a pager telling him he has 5 minutes to live. Then we learn that the money was stolen before he even received it. And again, another one-liner. Last wish. I wish you had more time. And Denzel literally blows this man's ass to smithereens. Just like Jesus, Creasy was on a mission and he made a point. Then the final confrontation, we find out who the boss is, and Creasy was able to find his brother. His family pulled up in there with a sawed-off shotgun, got shot again, almost got ran over, but was able to prevail. Getting contact, shooting off the brother's fingers, and that's how we find out that PETA is actually alive. And of course, Creasy needs proof of life. So he asked him, what does she call her bear? Of course, he comes back saying Creasy Bear. So he knows that PETA is most likely alive. He calls up Lisa. He said, Mary, I need you to come stat. She said, all right. And they meet up by a big, beautiful tree. And them meeting up at this tree, I think, is significant to the tree of life, which is a universal symbol representing interconnectedness, eternity, growth, and the cycle of life. They're meeting at the rendezvous point. Go and pick up PETA so Creasy can give him the brother and then also give himself up. He's going to give up his life so that PETA can have one. Again, the cycle. And also what Jesus did, giving up his life so we can have eternal life. So Denzel is bleeding really bad. He's not doing too good. And he tells Lisa, I'm going to go up there. Don't wait for me. You have this man's brother. You hold on to him until PETA is in your arms. And so he takes his trek up, just like Jesus carried his cross and carried it up. And then we finally see PETA alive and well. And the thing is, they both thought they were dead. PETA, I'm sure, thought Creasy died, and Creasy, sure enough, thought that PETA died. So when they see each other and she runs to him screaming his name, this part, and they finally hug. He's finally able to reunite with her. He did his job, and they have their little moment where they talk, and he says she's gonna go home, and she says, where are you gonna go? And he says he's gonna go home too, on the Blue Bayou, which means he's gonna go to peace, go to where he needs to go to in the sky. She's 9 years old. There's a lot that happened. I'm sure she wasn't able to at that moment understand everything. And she says that she loves him and that, you love me too, right? And he agrees. And then she runs off, and Peta and her mama reunite. She's back in her rightful place. Denzel sheds a tears, holding his St. Jude as he walks to the thugs who are gonna take him away. Then we see a glimpse of Peta realizing what's happening, and then Una Palabra plays. And mind you, because of this movie, I learned to play that song in guitar, and it's still one of my favorite songs that I can low-key remember. We see the foreshadowing from the beginning of the volcano, and we see Creasy look at that volcano while holding his St. Jude until he finally passes away. And in the words of Monique at the BET Awards, I have never seen a man die so sexy. If you know, you know. And that's pretty much the end of the film. And it's a great film. It is one of my favorites for sure. It still holds up today, even with the Magical Negro Trope. And is that my favorite thing? No. But I think it was filmed so well. I think the time, the era is of importance, and also the chemistry of all the actors just worked. This movie is so entertaining, and it is overall, the mood of it is sad, but because it's so entertaining with the action, you kind of get caught up in that. And then the final 10 minutes of it, it felt like a gut punch. I shed a few tears with this last watch because even though Denzel has made his peace, just like Jesus when he made his peace and died and, did what he needed to do, my sadness now is that Peta will never be the same. He was in her life for all of 2 months, and he was able to love her and to teach her and to protect her better than her own damn daddy. And the sadness comes from that she will never see that man again. She will have so much trauma at the age of 9 to unpack for the rest of her life. In my overall opinion, don't be a magical Negro and save these white people. We can't, okay? And I know Mark Anthony is Latino. He's a Mexican in the film. I get it. He set him up from the jump. And talking about that, Judas, don't get involved with desperate, broke people, especially men, or you'll get an innocent, sexy black man killed. If they won't kill you themselves. And finally, leave revenge to the professionals. If I can't do vengeance like him in this movie, then there's no point in doing it. He just had so much style and substance. And that's my overall review and take. I have proven my points. There are several parallels, and yeah, great movie. Such a staple. If you guys have any other tropes, any other ideas, any other comparisons that relate to this film, please leave them in the comments below. I would really like to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you eat well, drink well, sleep well, move your body. And until next time, what do we say, Henrietta? Ciao. Hell glad. Hell Dakota family. Who Gethsemane? La Hermet. The melancholy